welcome to Laughing Monkey Music Show. Taylor and Kevin Kinney, how are you?
Good. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere in Shreveport, Alabama. Where am I? Louisiana.
Louisiana. Your
I'm at the
first day of
thrift
your
store.
tour,
It's the
right?
first day of my tour with Amy Ray,
Yep.
and we've got everything but the lamp because I usually buy a lamp for every tour, and then think about on it, and then so we're in search of the lamp right now.
That's great. And anybody doesn't know, Kevin is obviously from Driving Crying, which I've heard and been listening to for a good part of my life. And I want to talk about your new album. I just want to say when I first met, was introduced to you and your music. And I got to say, I went to college. I'm up in New England. I went to college in 89, 90 in Atlanta, Art Institute for music. I don't know if it's around anymore, I don't think. Um, but I don't know where I saw you guys play. I think it was before Fly Me came out, and you guys were just so good. And I saw you guys in a club. I can't remember which club it was at this point. You know, Cotton Club. I don't even know. It's been so long. I was touched.
Probably Cotton Club. That was our home for in the early '90s,
Yeah,
late '80s.
I was touched by how great you guys were, and I fell in love ever since. And being a fan of music and diversity, and people in the show know I love all types of music. So some of my favorite bands are like you, where so much different stuff going on in your albums. Um, which is great. And I know like you've had on your solo stuff, you go a little more folkier, which is really cool. And gonna kind of bring us up to where we are right now. Let's talk about this album. Think about it.
Well, oh, are you still
Yep,
there?
I'm not going anywhere. You froze for
Okay,
a
wait.
minute.
Okay, something happened to my phone.
All right,
Wait.
I'll edit it.
Are you
There you go.
there?
Yep.
Oh, there we are. Okay,
And
sorry.
action.
I'm in my car. um, well, the folk thing for me is when I left Milwaukee, I had a punk rock band, and then I had I saw late in like right the re-release of "Don't Look Back" by Bob Dylan came
Mhm.
out. Like it came out in the theaters, like in the early '80s, like '81 or something like that, and it blew me away because I wasn't really dialed into folk music. I liked rockabilly and things like that,
Right.
and doo wop and things like that. But then when I saw that, I was like, oh, that guy's a punk, and
Yeah.
so I started trying to write acoustic songs, and it was a disaster. It was really hard to figure it out. So I'd been so used to writing angry, or not really angry songs, but just quasi political, punk rocky, what I don't know, kind of songs. And then, you know, and then I moved down south and worked at the sewage plant and listened to Don't Look Back and then I listened to uh uh Times Are Changing, and then I kind of listened to Dylan chronologically, like I didn't listen to it all at once. I listened to it in order, as it went on. And and so I really fell in love with this, watching him play a song with just leaning on the words. I thought, well, that's really hard. That's really a really talk about a crossword puzzle. And trying to figure that out is not easy. Um, and so I, I was really warming up to that, about to explore that in Atlanta. I started doing open mic nights and things like that. And then I did this show with Dyke Kreutzen, my friends in this punk rock band, Dyke Kreutzen, and Tim saw me. And so Tim recruited me to like start a rock and roll band with him. So that's where Drive It Cry came in. But I was really kind of torn because I didn't want to abandon this like acoustic thing. So I incorporated it into Driving and Crying. And what happened was I wound up with, 10 rock and roll songs and 10 folk songs. And then, so like two of the folk songs would make it onto a Driving and Crying record. And then I'd have eight left over. And then the next record, I'd have eight rock songs and eight folk songs. And two of the folk songs would make it on the record. And then, so I had six left over. So I wound up with like 25, 30 folk songs that weren't really good for Driving and Crying. And that's where Peter Buck stepped in and and kind of kick-started my folk career with the McDougal Blues record. And so I've kind of had uh a schizophrenic, you know, kind of bipolar kind of world since then. Uh, but so I went back to Athens for this record and used David Barbie, who was an engineer at John Kane's studio. Peter, I started off with Peter Buck and me at the from the get go,
Mhm.
and then I had my friend Colonel Bruce Hampton's rhythm section, who I really wanted to use, and I wanted to do something a little bit different as far as like stand up bass and stuff like that. So I thought this would be cool. I haven't really done a stand up bass record, so we did half of that, and then COVID hit, and I was like, oh no. So side one of the new record is me, Colonel Bruce Hampton's bass player, and Kevin Scott and Darren Stanley, his rhythm section, and then Peter Buck doing some ebo and some really cool 12 string and ebo and stuff like that. And my brother's on it, and then Lauer Jometz from Driving and Crying is just the one of the shining stars. He's such a great musician. He's beyond. I don't know where this. He's 30 years old or something, but you know, if you told me he played with Elvis, I would believe him. He's such an old soul, and he's
Yeah.
so. I can't even believe when I watch him on stage. Like I'm in his band. Like where did this guy come from? Jesus Christ! But he works really, really hard. He practices constantly. He's constantly rebuilding his guitars. So it's inspiring to me, you know, working with Sadler Vaden and Aaron Lee Tashin and Warner. I mean, I've had some great guitar players, you know, I've been honored to play with. You know, and Peter Buck is, you know, he's like Jimmy Page. You know, he's come up with some amazing classic guitar riffs. Like if you just played the first, you know, 30 seconds of dozens of REM songs. It's mind blowing. You know, I don't know if he wrote all of them. I'm assuming he did, but you know, REM's is a mystery to me. You know, you know, by design, they're supposed to be a
Right.
mystery.
And they
Um,
are.
yeah,
The fact that he stopped playing out bigger right now is actually another crime unto its own. That Peter isn't bigger known in guitar circles to me, you
yeah,
know,
he should be top 10 guitar players.
that people are still talking about. I
Period.
mean, oh, that guy, you know, I know, I'm 52. I know
Yeah,
how awesome he is. I love REM. I was in Atlanta.
right.
It was, you know, it was all you guys. So I was like, yes.
Yeah,
But nowadays, people are like, who? I'm like, are what REM? Did they have that song? I'm like, you kidding me, right? They wrote
yeah,
some of the best pop songs ever, and it is pop
yeah. I mean,
sensibility songs. And
we did the Chronic Town celebration for them. You know, with Black Crows helped put, you know, were the champions behind it.
yeah,
And I don't know, did you hear about that Chronic Town thing we did with
if you could
Chris
actually
and
go
Rich
into it more, please.
Robertson?
Yeah, please go into it
What's
more in
that?
details. If you could actually go into details, I only heard a little bit about it. If you could share a little more in detail, I'd like to hear more.
Yeah, like Chris and Rich, they went and they had dinner with Peter in Portland, and then they called me up and were like, "Hey, what do you think if we do this Chronic Town 40th anniversary?" It's like, "Oh, has it been 40 years?" They're like, yeah. I said, "Man, I'm in. If you're gonna help put it together, I'm in." You know.
Mhm.
And so they're like, yeah, let's call up these people, and you know, I'll call Lenny Kay, and we'll call, you know, Mitch Easter, and we'll get, you know, and so we had Fred Armisen, and we had David Cross hosted, and we had, you know, we had the guys, people from Pylon, and
Oh
we
wow,
had Steve Wynn from the Dream Syndicate, and we had the, you know, half the Patti Smith group, we had David Ryan Harris. It was just a stunning evening, and we did 2 nights, one at the 40 watt and one, and then me and Chris Robinson did King of Birds together, which was really beautiful. And drummer Jeff Sullivan, the original Jeff Sullivan, drummer for Driving and Crying, who is originally from Mr. Crow's Garden,
yeah,
who we stole. That was the first time Chris and Jeff had played together since we stole their drummer. So it was just a really great evening, and but what I'm kind of getting at is like what you're saying is like we were doing it because nobody else was.
yeah.
You know, we wish that the Lemon Twigs and all the LA band, we wish they were doing it, or younger bands in Athens. You know, I wish they were doing it, but it wasn't like we were like there were 10 different Chronic Town tributes going on. I was like, there was nothing going to happen. And like, if it wasn't for Rich Robinson and Chris to like kind of put it all together, it would have there would have been no celebration for it. So it was like it was cool to be part of it, but you know, we were kind of hoping we were one of 10 different celebrations of it because it was a very important record. You know,
Yeah,
it was as important as Zeppelin 1 in the South. You know, it was like the kudzu circuit was created with that record. You know, the everything came from, you know, the
it did lead
DBs
a
and the
charge.
it kind of put the South on the on the radar, especially coming from the Midwest where I had never really heard of any of these people, you
Yeah.
know, until, you know, I got down here in 82, late 82. And, you know, I was already late to the party at 82, you know, 83 or whatever it was. No, I think it was 80. Yeah, 83. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah, you know, it's stunning. My granddaughter's 17 and I'm like, yeah, REM, it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm like, oh no. So,
Oh,
you know, so
it's hard.
anyway, I'm so honored to have, you know, a connection with them. I know I name drop them a lot because, but I just freaking love them, and I want people to remember how special they are. And so when I had Bill Berry played on one song on my record, you know, like so and getting into my point. Side two of my
Yeah.
record is the I it was COVID, so David Barbie from Sugar and my producer played bass, and the drummer was Brad Morgan from the Drive By Truckers. Except I had one song left, and Brad couldn't do, so we did uh, this kind of like the finale of the record. It starts off with a song called "Think About It," and it ends with a song called "Stop, Look, Listen, Think About It." So it's kind of like a everything I do is kind of like I try to create a fake rock opera, you know, you know, I try to have some sort of story arc at the last minute. I just move the chapters around and try to make it into something. But so yeah, so Bill Berry came in, played on that one, and he did,
How'd
you
you even
know,
find him? Isn't he like in Nova Scotia and witness relocation or
no, he
something?
lives in Athens on a.
I'm joking.
He lives on a. Oh right, yeah.
He's so
So but
quiet.
he
Like you
had
haven't
been.
heard from him since I don't know.
Well,
I remember no.
I didn't know he was kind of back in the fold. But my friend Mike Mantione kept telling me like I'm making a record with Bill Berry, you know, and so that
Oh,
record's
good,
coming out this month
good.
called The Bad Ends, or it came out. It just came out. Mike Mantione from 5/8 and Bill Berry in a band together doing every song. It's a great record. It's
I'll have
on
to check
New
it
West
out.
Records. It's on New West. It just came out like uh I think it just came out uh like January 20th or something like that. And so they're Bill Berry isn't going to be there, but Mike the Bad Ends, the band, the other are opening for Driving and Crying at the Variety Playhouse coming up in a couple of weeks. So uh
Oh wow.
that'll be cool. But right now I'm just gonna do 6 shows in a row right now with Amy Ray Band out here in Dallas tonight, and then Austin tomorrow, and then Houston, and then the day off, and then Monday in Tipitina's, and then there's a really cool place in Jackson, Mississippi called Dueling Hall, in a
Mhm.
cool little neighborhood in Jackson that Driving Crime's been playing. And then, have you ever been to Saturn in Birmingham? The Saturn, it's owned by
No,
the drummer from Man or Astro Man, I think. I don't know, but it's like the best venue, one of the best venues next to the 40 watt I've ever played at. Really great sound and
yeah.
hospitality and things like that.
I haven't been to many clubs in Birmingham. It's mostly driven through.
Yeah, there's a good music scene in Birmingham. There's a lot of good clubs. You know,
It's
always have been.
you actually it kind of jumped into like what my question was when I listened to the album. I'm like, man, it feels like two separate albums. It feels like you're starting off,
It is.
and that's what I thought.
It's two
That was my
separate
whole
albums.
question. And
Yeah,
actually, you say you end with "Stop, Look, and Listen," but actually, "Never the Twain Shall Meet" is really, as far as the line for digital media, is the last one. No music; it's just you vocally
yeah.
stylizing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the that's the encore.
what's that all about? Like, what was that? The thought behind that to add that?
Well, it was a well, it's a it was kind of an Irish. I used to do that. It's a lot better now that I've been doing it for a while. Uh, but it's a yeah, it's an a cappella thing that I do before Let's Go Dancing and Drive a Crying shows sometimes.
Mhm.
And it was kind of an Irish. I was trying to write a kind of a pogsy kind of Irish kind of song. My brother, we're all Irish uh and I just never really had a St. Patrick's Day song, so I thought I'm gonna write a St. Patrick's Day song. Uh, and so but there's these really great. If you Google it, it's like growing up on the Mississippi. Like my grandfather grew up on the Mississippi, and my father, and my grandmother, and so we're all from that basin. They moved to Milwaukee in the 40s or 50s, but um, there's a thing that happens when the Mississippi floods and the caskets come up when the banks go when the Mississippi, because the Mississippi isn't like people don't remember. I mean, I think, but the Mississippi is a big S, and
Right.
so when it floods, the S's it all becomes one huge like lake basically. And so in between there, if there's graveyards, the casket if it sits long enough, the caskets can rise and they kind
Cool.
of float down the river. So I kind of wanted to write this song about a guy that had never left his little town, and
I
finally
got
his
you.
casket floats to the surface, and he's like traveling down the Mississippi like he'd never done. So it's a story about a guy traveling down the Mississippi in a casket.
That needs to be like a video or the basic plot for a movie. That's just, you know,
I
that's
I'm
so
open
funny.
for offers.
That is
I'm open to offers.
that is a great plot. But I think the album itself is really really fun though too. I mean, it breaks up. I actually noticed track four though, the Innocent, a little version of that in there. It was kind of
Yeah, that's my brother on Vibes and Peter Buck on Ebo. And I originally did a version of that with a saxophone, and I lived with this woman, a poet, Lydia Lunch, and she was my roommate in Brooklyn when I
mhm.
and we did a version where she like did this really cool spoken word over it, but I couldn't, obviously I couldn't find her for this, especially during COVID. But yeah, yeah, I just reimagined the innocent. I kind of came up with that because I really, I've been doing things over the years where I do a version of Scar but Smarter
Yeah.
on this record called Flower and the Knife. That's like a different version where you can hear the vocals. I wanted to reimagine some of my stuff in a I don't want to be afraid to the words change the keep the words and change the music. So I kind of like
Mhm.
doing stuff like that. So yeah, the innocent is kind of a version like that. It's
It,
a darker, it's not like the other driver crime power is like, empowering, like get used to it,
right.
don't worry, move on. You're gonna get screwed, but it's okay. We just move on. We're used to being screwed, so it's cool. Uh and this is more of a like from the perspective of the woman down in the street, since they're with her children weeping. This is like her just like sitting there, like just like despondent, like this is so screwed up. Like I can't, I want you to want me. I want you to know what it is that I got here and what I'm looking for, So I
It
wanted
feels
it to be
dark.
a little more sad, a little more introspective and scary. Like living on the street is freaking scary, It's a not, you know, there was, you know, I've had moments of my life where, I had nowhere to go and sleeping in my car or whatever and just sitting there, you know, watching the world go by. And it's, wondering, what do I do? Like, where do you go from zero? Where do you
Uh,
go from zero? You try to, you know, and, you know, yeah, but that's kind of that perspective that version is kind of taken from. It's not real fun to listen to. It's a little bit sad and a little bit scary and a little bit uncomfortable, but I loved what Peter did as far as just making some really despondent emo guitar in there. Is really awesome.
So dark. The first thing I thought of was like Blue Velvet with like Dennis Hopper breathing into a mask. I was hearing that bass
Yeah,
sound. It just felt very dark and like you just don't know what
yeah,
could be going on in the background type of thing. Not the actual movie, but
yeah,
that feeling when you first watch the movie, you're like, what is going on? It's just so
yeah,
feels so heavy, you know, in the air.
yeah.
But it's beautiful. I mean, I'm really gonna tell people check this album out. It's just really, really, really fun. I dig it. Um, and the fact you can go back and revisit it, and the talk I had recently with another artist, when an artist gets to redo their music, I know sometimes like labels put you in a spot where they won't give you your royalties, or whatever, and an artist will go back and just redo it on something else, the same album, and so they can collect the money on it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
But sometimes that artist, what they'll do is they'll take their hits, and when they redo it, they do it kind of different,
yeah,
and that's kind of weird because it's not like being reimagined. Like you're doing this, you're kind of having fun with it. It's like redoing the song almost exactly, but then changing the chorus. It's like a fine line of how to redo your songs without like either really redo it and honor it differently, or you just shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? And I
yeah,
think it always pops up when you were always doing stuff in your through the years when you guys do stuff. It really kind of still honors it and it reimagines it and it kind of takes it more on a journey because you're not covering yourself really. You're reinterpreting it.
yeah, definitely. Well, I the only thing that makes there's only a certain number of chords and vocabulary that we use and mix and match. The only thing that makes you special is what you're giving it, and I'm very emotional, in what I do. I really close my eyes and I imagine it, and so it's a different emotion that's leading it instead of, you know, uh, that's leading it. So, I try to, yeah, I try to make it a little bit, uh, you know, a little bit. It just it's just like I like these books. I like to keep the words the keeping the words the same to me is important because I
Mm-hmm.
just really want it to be a 360 viewpoint. There's this book that I stumbled upon by this guy. I don't know if I'm saying the word right because I didn't go to college, but Nakeem Mahfouz, I guess, might be his name. Naq. But anyway, he had this really great book that I read, um, about he wrote it in Alexandria, and it's about this like a murder in an apartment building. I don't and how every tenant sees it differently, and everybody imagines the day totally differently. And it was just a really cool. Every chapter is like another tenant that saw the same thing, and totally nothing, none of them match. And I thought that's a really cool uh thing.
Concept, yeah.
I thought that's kind of a neat perspective. Like we all saw the same thing, and everyone's story is different. You know,
It's just true.
so
You have ten.
that's
You
kind
have
of
10 people do one of your songs. You can have different versions. If
yeah, because they're
they,
bringing their own emotion to it. My wife Anna has been putting together a compilation that's coming out very soon. Of She's got over 50, 60 versions of my songs recorded by other people,
oh, nice.
and some of the versions are just amazing. You know, really great to see people reimagine some of this stuff, and some people have really taken it to heart. And I don't want to spoil it, but I'll tell you one version that is there's a couple that have really got me, but the Peter Holzapfel does a version of this song called Midwestern Blues I do that is just so real. It made me cry. It was so great, you know.
That's awesome.
So, but I wear my heart on my sleeve. I mean, I'm driving and crying. It's definitely real.
Well, yeah. Well,
I
anybody
love
that saw the
crying, so
documentary
if I
knows that you guys are real. You know.
I'm not afraid to cry on stage. Or
No, no. But I'm saying that the documentary showed you guys wear your heart on your sleeve. There's no, you guys are not pulling any
oh
punches. You know that
yeah,
was
I don't
great.
know.
I
I
loved
don't.
it. I thought it was a good. I think it was good for people to see. You know,
Yeah, I
healthy.
didn't. I only saw the documentary once, and I was watching with my son at the premiere, and like towards the end, my son says to me, hey man, does that singer guy, does he live? I'm like, I don't know. Let's keep watching. I'm not
Oh
sure.
man, your
Doesn't seem
son
like he
rules.
will.
That's awesome. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God. Like I didn't know what to say when I first saw it. And I was like, but afterwards I'm like, oh, I get it. It's so real. It's so driving and crying. It's perfect.
But it, well, this friend of mine did it. He has a really popular radio show in Atlanta now, but before that, he had a really great perspective on like he really wanted it to be like that. He was a big DJ in LA and had the morning zoo crew and all that stuff, whatever. And it was a big show in LA. And they came to Atlanta and didn't know who we were. And like I did their show and I was so embarrassed. I was like, this is so like they don't know who I am. They're talking to me like driving crowd, like, yeah, the name of your band is what? And it seems like you're doing a gig in town. And I was like, these guys have no idea that this. I mean, we're
Yeah,
not, but that's our little hamlet. I was like, yeah, I was like, should at least know who we are in our town.
right.
So,
You guys are established. You guys were. I mean, there's no denying that. I mean,
yeah, especially in Atlanta.
oh
So
God, yeah.
so I didn't really get on with them very well. I was kind of like, I don't want to do those guys again. I'm not into the zoo crew or whatever. So um yeah um the he wanted to do. He eventually kind of saw us and started seeing us play and was like, oh wow, I didn't. And kind of started listening. He's a huge music fan. Like we
Hmm.
talk all the time, but it's always about like 10 years after or or Blue Oyster Cult. He loves Blue Oyster Cult for some. He's just like, why aren't they in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? He's very passionate about Blue Oyster Cult this month. But we have great time. He's a Beatle nut. He Stones. He reads everything, and we just talk about music. We don't talk about politics or anything. And so I was really honored to have him. That movie is his perspective of what we are, and you know, anybody's welcome to make a movie about us if they want. I'll give them my phone book. They can talk to. But once again, it wasn't like we're fighting off 12 different. I had this one friend of mine got really mad at me because he's like, "Why didn't you let me do it?" I was like, "I never said you couldn't. You have to come. I'm not seeking. I didn't ask anybody to make a
Yeah,
documentary about us. If somebody said I want to make a documentary about you, is it cool I talk to your friends? The answer is and will be sure, whatever you want. I'm cool
yeah.
with it. You know, I don't want to
It's a
pay
good.
for it.
No, no, but it was an interesting thing. I want people to go back and that's what's really great. You talk about like you going into Bob Dylan and as a fan, I mean, there's still some stuff I haven't listened to, and I started listening to in the beginning. But life gets in the way during my 30s and 40s, where my access to listening to music was not as deep as it was. I've been going back again, but you hit every genre of music between you solo and you with a band, you know, and you guys do it well. It could be southern rocky, but to me, you are. I like you guys because you guys folk punk with some good like rock riffs. Like I like the energy
Yeah,
of that to me still. I don't want to label you, but I mean to me it feels much more authentic. Like it's because you haven't changed at all. Your
yeah,
songs and craft has gotten good, but your songs have always been good. It's never been a question about the quality. Your voice, you have a signature voice that has such emotion in it. And depending on how you sing it, it can be fire or it can be sadness. It just
yeah.
ever so slightly. You've mastered that with your voice, and that's part of the power of your songs
Well,
in my
thank you.
eyes as a fan. I
I've
mean,
if I had an option to have a guitar player in my early days that was a great singer, I probably would have been like,
everybody would have done that.
because I
But I mean, when
do
you
don't
first
like,
started
I
singing,
hate my
though,
voice.
I
I
know, but
hate my voice, but
when you first started singing, though, were you like everybody probably goes, "That's not the standard rock voice." No, it's freaking better. Like your voice is so
well,
different and so
I
distinct and
thought I
so
sounded like
beautiful.
Mick Jagger.
I gotta be honest, you don't sound
I
like
was
Mick
like,
Jagger to me.
no, I don't. I don't sound like Mick Jagger at all. But I thought I did. I mean, when I was, before I ever heard the recordings, and then
Right?
the first time
Yeah.
you get the recordings, you're like, oh my God, that's not
No,
me.
but
Like, yeah, it is. I'm like, oh crap.
some people have a higher voice and it doesn't sound as good. It's like there's something about your voice which is it's beautiful. It's just like it could have gone
Well,
either way, and you have a display in perfect. You won the lottery on that. And it could have gone
Well,
any way with you singing it, like because you could have been like, "Oh, I don't sound like all the other rocker guys." No, you don't, and
yeah.
that's what helped you kind of cut to the swath of musicians back then.
Well, I think what some of my favorite singers like are have some unique like I love Jimmy Dale Gilmore, but it's he's got that and Dylan of course was like
Right?
I'm not trying to sound like Dylan definitely, but
No,
definitely the Midwestern but I think a lot of my style came from bad PAs, like growing up in the 70s and the 80s and like no monitors. So I kind of
singing through
had to
guitar
come up with
amps,
this,
right?
huh?
Singing through guitar amps, plugging your microphone
Yeah.
into a guitar amp. That's all you had. Yeah,
Yeah, I kind of had to come up with a tone that would cut through, Like I think the PAs were really good. I probably like on this record I sing a little bit lower, I'm kind of singing my natural voice like when I'm, like this, but I think I kind of that whiny that reedy voice I have is just something I kind of came up with to cut through the band because monitors were so terrible up until the 90s.
I like that
You
you
know,
call it whiny. I can do like your higher trebly voice, and you're like my whiny voice.
I don't know.
We both have two
It,
different ways of thinking of your voice.
yeah, I don't know. I've heard it. Yeah, my opinion of my voice changes daily. But yeah, I mean,
Sound
like,
different.
on this record, I really wanted to make like actually. So speaking of that documentary, Eric was a big catalyst for this record because we had started to do this like we were going to think about in doing a podcast like 5 years ago, and I wanted to call it like 3 a.m. and I basically wanted to do like a song or a couple songs a week that were like very low key and like I was living in Brooklyn at the time and I want and like I had an apartment and I just want like that thing you do when you're trying to sing a song to somebody at 3 in the morning, but you live in an apartment building. So you kind of trying to keep it kind of quiet.
Yeah.
So I kind of that was the catalyst for this. So that kind of how the record kind of came up came about with like I told David like Stop Look Listen Think is the only one later that I really kind of it's kind of like the outro and what would be
Yeah.
playing over the
I think
credits,
so.
it's but everything else is kind of I was like, David, I really want to pump the brakes on the delivery. I don't want to push too much. And I want to almost be like Kerouac spoken word box set. I love that Kerouac box set.
Mhm.
So I kind of want to toy with it a little bit that way. So
Well, you
that's
did
kind
it.
of
This album, when it came out, I was like, all right, now I've heard him do every type of music. Like,
yeah,
like literally, you know what I mean? Except I
yeah.
really can't think of anything else. You pretty, I don't know. There might be some Bulgarian woman's choir is your next album because you're really,
Well,
running out of different styles to mix in.
I would love
Oh,
to do a record like you know who Dead Can. There's a band called Dead Can Dance that
oh
I
yeah,
just absolutely love, and I saw them and I had a night off in Amsterdam, and I was by myself, and I they were playing in Den Haag, and I got fourth row seats, one ticket, and I went and saw them, and it changed. Like I knew I have friends that love them, and I had listened to them, but till you see her live, it was so beautiful. This like Arabian night, kind of like, and I guess it was on Game of Thrones or something because there was a lot of. It was sold out with a lot of
really.
but it was so beautiful and I would love to do a record like that someday so that there might be a couple more that you might surprise you in
I
the
love it. You
future but
keep bringing them. You keep bringing them. I want, I do want to thank you today. I don't want to get all your time. I do want to say one last thing. I do want to say when I know Smoke, when Smoke came out, you got, I even gave yourself grief from it. I thought it was a good album. I just want to say,
I
I
love
thought it was
it
a good album.
I love
Okay.
it now.
I loved when it came out. I'm like, it's still good.
Yeah,
There's some good songs on it.
yeah.
And I like your songwriting, so I'm a lot more probably open to it, and I like different things. But I thought, what are you gonna do? Fly Courageous is totally different. I mean, I like Smoke was totally. You got the riffs. It's how you space your songs and your lyrics apart. I don't know. I just when it came out, it went dog.
Well,
I was like,
it was
I just
it
want to
was a
say,
series. It's real. It was in the midst of a series of a couple mental breakdowns. I had a mental breakdown. That our producer Jeff was getting divorced and was having a breakdown. We were exhausted because we probably shouldn't have made that record because we had just got off the road after touring for almost 3 years or 2 years.
yeah,
And then we went to Atlanta and I was getting divorced and I was living in a thing and my ex-wife was calling and harassing me and it was a really really dark thing, but it when you hear she doesn't want to go, there is no real primal scream shit happening in the world than that
yeah,
song. Doesn't want to go, it's real. I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just kind of channeling this crazy desperate, don't push me because I'm close to the edge. I got my finger on the trigger. I got my back against the wall. That's freaking real, man.
yeah,
That's not some like, suburban kid singing. That's the real, that's like closest thing to problem, probably the real, most real I ever, it's a 100% an uncalculated record. It is so honest and frustrating. I mean, I'm Chris Blackwell from Island Records. One of my favorite producers and one of my favorite people. He came and I laid out a line. I berated him. Like, I don't know why. I was screaming at him about how Island Records didn't know who we were. We were never like, it's like we're like the accidental bastard child of Island Records. And I see Tone Loc and Melissa Etheridge things everywhere, and we don't get any, we're not in Rolling Stone and we're not in Spin, and we're no one gives a fuck about us. And I was like, and it's because you guys don't, I was screaming at them, and I don't, and I still feel terrible about it to this day because he's probably sitting there going like, what is he talking
had
about?
had nothing to do
Gave
with
him
him,
a
right?
five record. I just gave him enough more money to make five freaking albums. What he does with it is he's probably looking at me like, what an asshole. And I still feel like an asshole. And every time someone says, I'm going to see Chris Blackwell, I say, please apologize to him for me. I feel terrible. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I
that's
was
so
having a
funny.
bad day. My
That's what it
ex-wife
sounds
had been
like.
berating me, and I was probably drunk, and I was suffering a cocaine hangover, and I'm so sorry. Please. So
Oh God, it's
what
so
to
funny.
do? You know?
But it
Yeah.
it was a good album to me when it first came out. I think the market changed. I think that's when rock started to dip, and it was the beginning of the '90s, and the rock industry
Yeah.
just fell right out. It was I think
Yeah. And
it,
I was
it was
pissed
right in
off at
there. Yeah,
my band. I was pissed off at my band for like, teasing their hair and like doing these rock videos and shit. And I was like, I fucking told you guys we weren't like everybody's trying to fit in with Cinderella and Poison and all the big rock radio. And I didn't want to fucking go there, man. I don't have, And then Nirvana came and said, everybody with teased hair, you're done.
right.
It's
And they
over.
had a good five
Go
years, and then
away.
everybody was gone with that too. And then
Yeah.
look what happened after grunge went. What happened in the music scene? It got weird. Music got
Yeah.
weird for a while, didn't it? Oh my God. There were some bikes that came out then. Oh, I don't even
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But you guys could have. I
So
think that's the problem is you guys could have translated over the rock into the grunge.
well,
You kind of could have stayed your own ground. You weren't really
my
any of that.
last my last hope is that people that are like 9 years old right now will discover us in 14 years.
Oh, I think
you
so.
know, when they're like 27, they'll be like, "Hey man, did you ever hear Driver Crying?" It's like, no. It's like, man, they have like 21 albums out. It's like, really? It's like, yeah, and most of them are not bad.
No, they're good. I think you'll be the Bob Dylan of their generation, is what it is.
Oh, I'll be happy to I'll be happy to be the Leo Sayer of there. I'm good. Whatever.
What a great reference. Oh my God.
I'm good.
That's
I'm
awesome.
good with that. I love, what the hell.
I know.
Well,
That's
we
just funny.
probably we're gonna continue our travels out to Dallas.
I
And
know. I want to thank you very much.
thank
This has been awesome.
thank you so much for having me, man.
This is awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the time. People check them out and check out the links. Take care, man. Bye bye.
Okay, see you later.
Bye bye.
Bye.